Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I've got an absolutely awesome guest on the show today. So, all the way from Philadelphia, I've got Matin Haghkar. So, he is from a little place called Philadelphia. You might have heard of it. And we're going to talk today about how his real estate journey has developed over time from first buying his investment property to now ranking with his team in the top 5% of all agents in the MLS. So, Matin, you've had an amazing journey in the property world. How did this all begin? Where did it first start?
Sure. I started very young. Luckily, I had an older brother that was 5 years older than me that actually started his mortgage business and kind of influenced me on that journey. And he read, of course, not to be cliche, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and influenced me to read that book. And I actually read it when I was around 16 years old. And we grew up very, in a modest setting, to say the least, not a lot of money, all that kind of stuff, a lot of, difficult background. But long story short, read that book. And then I worked really hard all through high school. I worked, 40 hours a week. It was unbelievable. But I saved up a good amount of money. And this is before the subprime crisis. Before the GFC in 2006, 7, 8. So I saved up a good chunk of money and I actually bought my first investment property right when I turned 18. With my brother, we partnered on it. And then from there, I actually got my real estate license. I started university at Drexel University, and I went for a dual degree in civil and architectural engineering. And I basically just started buying investment properties in and around the college campus. I lived there with my friends, and then I bought another one, and my other friends moved in there, and so on and so forth. And it just took off from there. We were blessed, and it was a blessing and a curse where, it was the financial crisis. Yeah, it wasn't great, but the subprime market, it was kind of like a tool. You could either use it to your detriment or you could use it to really greatly benefit yourself. And I was pretty clever and responsible with what I was buying because back then the rates were between, the rates I were getting were between 9 and 12% because I was, no doc and low income student, all that kind of stuff. So because the rates were so high, I can only buy properties that would cash flow to pay those mortgage rates. And long story short, I made a lot of good decisions. Obviously, bought a lot of property. And then, the crisis happened and took a big hit, lost some properties and lost, a lot of money, whatever. But the benefit that came out of that was I was able to modify or refinance a lot of my investments from that 9 to 13% interest rate to a 2% interest rate or a 3% interest rate. So everything that I was making no money on because they were breaking even at that 9 to 13% was now to 2%. So it helped the cash flow tremendously. And then it just went from there, bought more and more. I actually, when I graduated Drexel University, I worked as a full-time civil engineering consultant for about 8 years. But I simultaneously ran my real estate business, kept growing it, was doing both, working tremendous hours throughout the process, and eventually got to the point where I had to make a decision. I couldn't do both. So I left my engineering position, and Remax came to me with an opportunity to actually open a Remax franchise. So I opened my Remax franchise. They kind of scouted me based on sales history, volume, experience, that kind of thing, and I was a good fit. But I opened the franchise in 2015, roughly, and from there we grew. It was just me and my girlfriend at the time. Now she's my wife. We have two kids. But we grew and grew and grew, and long story short, now we have two locations. We have over 50 agents that work for us. We have a large property management business as well, over 1,000 units under management. I do development, I build ground up, construction, all that kind of stuff. We also have a mortgage business that we run. And it's been great. We can't be happier. And I love this business. It's really, my favorite thing about it is you really get what you put into it. And it's not easy. I mean, especially if you don't have a nest egg when you start, because it's all commission based. You eat what you kill kind of thing. So it's very difficult when you're first starting, if you don't have anything or a nest egg or a referral, kind of background and all that kind of stuff. So, it was difficult, but that's why, when we first started, I wasn't doing it full time. Well, I was doing it full time, wearing multiple hats, but then after a while, the business took off and I was able to kind of do that full time.
Wow, that's a journey and a half. to say the least.
Mhm.
That's yeah, bit of a journey from start to finish. It's funny because I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was my first sort of finance book ever. One of the managing directors I work with was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, you're interested in this finance stuff. Read this book to start off," and then kind of that sort of unlocked it from there. So I always find it quite entertaining when I meet other people who also had that as their sort of first sort of experience in that sort of things. So it's also quite interesting to hear about where you talked about buying your first property when you were so young. I mean, the average age of a first-time buyer in the UK these days is in their 30s, like easily in their 30s. It's heading more towards the 40s sort of direction. So how did you, I mean, obviously I appreciate you paired up with your brother there. How did you manage to sort of get that first property? Where did you kind of get that initial kind of funds to get up and running?
Sure. So, like I said, I worked tremendous hours, and I saved about, I want to say I had $30,000 when I was 17, which was to me like, $1 million. And it was a lot of cash. And, pairing, like I said, my brother to buy the first one, and from there, like I said, we were kind of blessed and cursed back then where we had the subprime market where, you can get a house with 106% financing. So not only would you get 100% of the money, but you would get 6% for your closing, up to 6% for your closing costs and everything else. So it was almost like you were getting, buying a house with no money. And then to boot, because I was a licensed realtor, I would get actually paid to buy the house because I would get the commission as well. So it was amazing. And we, like I said, we made some good decisions. And I feel bad for the current generation where they don't have access to that easy market. But at the same time, it is better for the greater good because there was a lot of irresponsible behavior with people buying properties that they couldn't afford or they were emotional decisions or not smart. So, that was a big part of it. And part of my background, not we always lived in like a very small apartment, never had a house. A bunch of us crammed in a shoebox, so it was tough. But that gave me the mindset of and I think the current generation has that problem where when you talk to them, they're like, oh well, I don't know what I want to do. I'm gonna figure it out, or I'm gonna go to school undecided major and figure it out. Where I zeroed in on a, target where I was like, I don't want to be poor and I want to own land and real estate because I didn't have any land and real estate growing up and we were poor. So, it was really easy to kind of zero in on that early on and getting that mindset. So it just gave me that mindset of, hey, I want to, and I started early and I saw that it was very also prestigious for me because like I said, we didn't have much. So just owning a house, even though I was going, under on it and I wasn't making any money, it was just very prestigious to own land, own real estate, and just keep pushing it, and it went from there. And then going to school, it was very like advantageous seeing that, hey, look, there's a big opportunity here where there's all this student rentals and they're, where the rents are so high compared to the purchase price. So it just started making sense in our mind to buy these student rentals up and keep going that direction. And one thing led to the other and it kind of took off from there.
Great. So you obviously had the opportunity with regard to Remax you mentioned earlier, and so obviously you had no sort of real estate experience with regard to the buying and selling world outside of your own at that point. So how did you first start to grow your property business with regard to the realtor side of things? How did you first start to grow that from sort of effectively a cold start?
Sure. So You know, where when we so I got my license in 2000, my real estate license in 2004. So I was doing a lot of sales and doing very well. And I was with Keller Williams at the time,
Mhm.
doing very well. I was always at the top of the list for sales volume, all that kind of stuff. And I think one of the things that really helped me on my real estate career, and I would say this to anybody that's getting in the business, is the biggest advantage you have was for me, I was born in just outside of Philadelphia. And we lived overseas for a few years and then moved back. But overall, I was born just outside of Philadelphia and raised all throughout that area my whole life. So I had a huge network of friends. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, college after that in the city. And just had a big network from that. And I would say majority of my clients have always been all my friends and my friends' parents that I knew growing up in the area. So that was a huge advantage. And I would say anybody that's thinking about getting in the business, if you are, let's say you moved to Colorado and you lived in Philadelphia and grew up there, if you move to Colorado and you don't know anyone, it's going to be very difficult to get customers, get clients, because it is no matter how much you advertise, the majority of your list clients are still going to be referral friends, your network, etc. So that is a huge advantage. And if you are somewhere that isn't where you grew up in or you moved around a lot, that is definitely a big disadvantage. So I think that is a huge part of it, of our success is, being from a local area, always be, growing up here and tapping into that network. So that was definitely a huge part of it.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if it's a British thing, but we're quite shy and reserved in the grand scheme of things. I don't like to shout about our successes or whatever else it might be. And yeah, whenever I start working with a new client, I'll always say to them, speak to your network, speak to your friends, speak to your family, send them all a WhatsApp, send them all a video sort of thing. And there's almost like a reluctance for lots of people to kind of reach out to their local network because they kind of think to themselves, well, this all goes terribly wrong in 6 months' time. I'm gonna look pretty stupid because I messaged them all saying I'm starting this property side of things, and this is how you can help me, sort of thing. But if it doesn't go well, I'm gonna look kind of have egg on my face. So what would you say to those people who are kind of in that situation, who are kind of hesitant to tell their friends, families, ex co-workers, whatever it may be, what they're doing because they're worried about sort of looking stupid in X amount of months to come?
Yeah, I think throw that mindset in the trash. So I think the biggest thing with anything you do, if you want to be successful, is having confidence and having confidence in yourself. And I forget where I heard this or read it, but basically, I like the mindset that confidence is built by fulfilling the promises to yourself. So you really have to, you can't fake confidence. So if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go to the gym every day this week and you actually go, okay, you're building your confidence. If you say, hey, I'm going to read one book this week and you actually do it, then that's how you build your confidence. Or if you say, hey, I'm going to spend X amount of hours on this project and you actually do it, you build confidence that way. So I would say, no matter what you do, build yourself and focus on yourself and that confidence will come. And, we're only on this earth for a short amount of time. So who gives a, whatever. So I would really advise to, build up your confidence and forget about that. And that mindset of like, oh, what if this, what if that? That's a luxury. If you don't have food on the table, you're not worried about what if this, what if that. So you kind of have to get that mindset back. And, a big part of it is, as I get older, I'm starting to find quote unquote religion more and this and that and having kids and whatnot. So, thinking that, hey, look, I'm a force for good. And the way we've always done business has always been, hey, I'm never going to do a deal for somebody that I wouldn't do for myself. And there's been so many transactions where a good friend of mine wants to buy a $2 million property. We're going to get a $50,000 commission or more. And I've talked them out of it because I told them, hey, look, like this isn't a good idea. You could build this house for, a quarter of the price that you're paying, or you could do this, do this, do that. And speaking against our own interests. But then, they appreciate that, they respect it, they know that you're talking against your own pocket, but they are the ones that will end up buying 10, 20 properties from you over the course of time, referring their friends and family and all that. And, your reputation takes a lifetime to build, but a moment to tear down. So having that mindset that, hey, look, I'm doing this to not only, benefit myself financially, but to actually help people, that confidence will come, especially if you work on yourself.
I really like that. I really like that. So let's talk about money if that's okay. So you brought money up, and again, being British, we don't really talk about money that much. So this is kind of out the comfort zone for all Brits involved. So I'll give you an idea about sort of fees in the UK and sort of how they're structured, and sort of a rough idea about where they are. So we only get a fee from the seller of the property. So the seller of the property pays our fee. The buyer pays no kind of commission to the agent at all, sort of thing. So it's only sort of one side of the deal effectively. The average house price in the UK at the time of recording is about £300,000, roughly speaking. And the average estate agency commission in the UK is about just over 1%, 1.2% in that sort of ballpark. So the average agent in the UK probably gets paid £3,500 per sale they do, which is probably, let's call it $5,000 to pick a nice round figure. How does that compare to the sort of figures that you charge over in the US?
Sure. So commissions have been under pressure since the day I started in this business in, 2003, 2004. And, basically when I first started, and not only commissions have been under pressure, but the commission split that you pay to the agents has been under pressure, which, has been a uphill battle, from when I got my license as a realtor to now being a broker and managing agents. It's been a very difficult challenge. But where there's a will, there's a way, and there's opportunity in all facets of that. So I'll give you an example. When I first started, I started with Century 21, and the commission split that I was getting was 50-50. And I was like, oh, whoop-de-doo, that's amazing. I got a job as a realtor. I'm getting a commission split. It could have been anything, and I would have been happy being a naive, 18-year-old. But, now the commission splits that are being offered are like 70, 80, 90, 99% with a flat fee, whatever, in different values propositions. Obviously, when you pay 70, maybe you get a lot of value, but when you pay 99, you get no value. So you have to do that cost benefit analysis. But the commission splits have been challenging because the broker's not making any money because they're giving all the money to the agent and not able to cover their overhead. But at the same time, the commission splits and the commissions being charged have also been going down where, when I first started, the standard was 6% commission, 3% to the buyer's agent, 3% to the listing agent. Typically, obviously all that was flexible. But then as time went on, the standard got closer to 5%. And now sometimes it's even lower and it depends. So, I would say basically in the way, and every market is different. Where we are, the average home price is actually close to the average of the country. So we're about 450 to 475 average, where the entire nation is about 450 to 475 as well. And I think we're a really good sample to look at with this kind of conversation where, we're kind of a tale of two markets, where in Philadelphia, it's become a buyer's market. The inventory sitting, there's more sellers than there are buyers. And in the suburbs, it is complete opposite. If you're in a good school district, if you're still getting 5 to 6 offers per house, they sell in one day, bidding wars, all that stuff. So looking at it from those two perspectives, if and we're in Philadelphia doing business, no, the sellers are willing to pay commissions and bonuses and whatever they can to sell the house. And as far as the commissions go, we may negotiate let's say to make the numbers easy, a 5% commission with the seller in Philadelphia. With that, we'll look at the neighborhood that and this goes for both sides, right? So we'll look at the neighborhood we're selling in, and let's say you're in a cul-de-sac and you're the only listing, and you are, property selling one day, it's quick sale, whatever. In that market, we might only offer the buyer's agent 2% and take 3% for ourselves. But if you're in a neighborhood where no, the properties are sitting on the market, nobody's buying anything, there's 5 other houses for sale that are just like your listing, then no, we'll actually do the reverse. We'll pay the buyer's agent maybe 3% and take only 2% for ourselves. So you really have to look at it from a market analysis standpoint, days on market, all that kind of stuff to figure out what commission structure makes sense for what property to get the optimal result. I think having that mindset is really important. And then, we just had the NAR ruling. Obviously, you're probably aware of it in the States where, they came down with the hammer on the commissions, which, and I'm probably gonna get some slack for this, whatever, you'll get some interesting comments. But that was basically, I think, one lawyer that was not happy with how their deal went and they thought they got ripped off by the agent. So they kind of changed all the rules and legislated against it. But it was really from people that don't really understand, I think, the business. I hate to say it, but regardless of that, we have to live with it. But, in the real business side of it, not much has changed with actually how business is done. The main differences are we used to be able to advertise the buyer's agent commission on MLS. Now you can't advertise the buyer's agent commission. So all that does is the buyer's agent emails the listing agent and says, "Hey, are you offering a commission?" And you say, "Yep, this is how much it is." Okay, great. So it's not on MLS, but you just got to email and ask for it. And that's been standard practice that we're seeing here. But I think having the mindset of like not rigidity and flexibility in your commissions and what you're paying the buyer's agent, what you're charging, what you're paying yourself, and all that stuff to get the optimal result for the client is the way to go. And being really analytical and not rigid, like, oh, the commission's 5%, it's 50-50 both sides, and that's the rules, blah, blah, blah. So I think having that mindset really helps.
And how do you combat against that downward pressure? Because I'm going to imagine here, if your fee is 5% in total, for example, and you mentioned the average price is, let's call it £500,000, sorry, $5,000. That's what, $25,000 worth of commission, $30,000 worth of commission overall, sort of thing, with the split there. So fairly decent amount of money in the grand scheme of things. So I'd imagine the marketplace for those properties is quite competitive for that. So how do you make yourself stand out from other agents who might want to get that property on the market?
Sure. So, having and not everybody has this, so I'll be brief on it, but having a track record and history and experience and all kinds of awards, which we have, really helps our resume to get those listings. So that's great. And we built that over the course of, 20 years. But, even if you don't have that, being going the extra mile and giving value for free. So when you go to your listing presentation or when you have that call, give them free advice, free information that they wouldn't have maybe heard somewhere else. Be honest, give them a market analysis, go through the market analysis in detail on every part of it, not just, hey, here's how much this one sold for, so here's how much you should sell yours for. It's like, no, look at the days on market, look at the percentage that it sold over the listing price or under the listing price, and all these other detailed factors that kind of sets you above the rest. But also giving, a nice maybe binder or a presentation to your client, or a potential client, all those little extra things. When they interview five people for a luxury listing or whatever, they're going to look at who gave them the nicest binder, who gave them the most free information, who gave them the best advice and seemed like they had the best fit, and who presented themselves also physically the best. If you go in shorts and a t-shirt, another guy goes in a suit, well, they're probably going to pick the guy with the suit. So, all those little things make a big difference. And then also on the commission side, you have to also live in reality where if you're in a market where houses are selling in one day, then yeah, if you're going in there with a strong mindset of like, oh no, I have to get 5%, well, guess what? You're probably not going to get it because they're going to get somebody that's going to say, hey, I'd rather sell it for 4.5%, but get every listing in the neighborhood versus 5% and just get this one or none. So I think being flexible with the commission and knowing the market you're in is very important and knowing your area. But that all those things change. Like I said, in Philadelphia, it's becoming more of a buyer's market. So the agents are getting paid more on the listing side, and the listing agents are able to up their commissions versus the suburbs is more of a seller's market, and those commissions are under pressure because everybody thinks, oh, I could just stick a sign in the yard and I'll get 10 phone calls, and they're not really wrong. They could stick a sign in the market and get 10 phone calls, but there's obviously a lot different things there where, we've had so many people that try to go, we'll interview them and or they'll interview us and then they'll go on a for sale by owner journey and then they'll call us a month later and say, hey, I'm getting hit with all these scams, all this spam information, a guy from Africa that has $100 million that wants to buy my house. We all know that email, and all that kind of stuff. And then separately, negotiating and coming up with the best terms, the contracts to protect yourself. You can't put a price tag on all that. And, there's a lot of for sale by owners that after they sell the house, they have a lawsuit because they didn't disclose something or they did something wrong or the escrow wasn't handled properly. So many aspects of it where I think a good agent easily pays for their commission themselves with what you save on, legal fees and headaches and protection, liability, insurance, all that kind of stuff. And then also potentially getting the highest price because in my mind, not to go on a rant and off a tangent, but the most important thing when selling anything, whether it's a house or a car or a watch or a boat or a plane or whatever, is exposure, having maximum exposure and getting the most eyeballs. And nothing gets better exposure with real estate sales than the MLS where we are. So, I think that mindset of like, hey, look, yeah, you might sell it yourself for 500, but if you get maximum exposure and get in front of every buyer, maybe you'll sell it for 550 and the commission was only 20 grand, whatever it was. So, those things make a difference.
Now, I suppose it's kind of looking at your proposition you offer as almost like a product. And you obviously mentioned, the way you present it and sort of the way you present yourself. And it's almost looking and saying, this is our product that we offer you. And this is kind of the box we fit into. This is how we present ourselves. This is how we present our properties. This is how we kind of list our properties, how we sell our properties. This is kind of the start to finish. This is our product we're putting forward for you. And we've kind of thought it through from start to finish. And we're always looking to improve it as well. So I really like that angle approach and it's really good. So talk me through about the team side of things. So you've got a team below you. You mentioned earlier on today, and you as a team, you're in the top 5% in the MLS currently. So what do you think makes your team so successful? What kind of separates them from sort of the rest effectively?
Sure. So we are lucky that and it took a long time to build. I mean, I've hired and fired so many people, throughout the years, and it was very painful. But doing it for so long and sticking it out and not losing hope, we really have a good company right now with a really good team. And I can't be happier where, they're all kind of they all have that mantra and mindset of like they care, which is very important to me, and having that golden rule of like, hey, I'm only going to do I'm going to treat others the way I want to be treated. So that really disseminates to everybody that is on our team and in our brokerage. And it's been amazing. And a lot of them are local people. And we have a very diverse crowd where we have, Chinese speaking agents, Indian speaking agents, Jewish, Yiddish speaking agents, French speaking agents, Farsi speaking agents. So we do have a very diverse crowd, and we do live in a very diverse area, where, the reality of it is whether, people like it or not, people like to work with people that look like them. So, having a diverse crowd does help. But also, being educated and at the top of your game with your market and knowing what's going on is so important. Where you're not just an agent that does one deal here and there. And even if you are, you need to study and educate yourselves. Where, for example, for myself, I have automatic searches set up in everywhere I primarily do business, and I get emailed every listing every single day. Yeah, it's a lot, but I just peek at it and see, hey, here's where prices are going. Here, another price drop. Oh, this new listing came out here, and I think that's very important. And we do have a very cohesive office where we, have sales meetings, trainings, keeping up with the industry. As soon as especially going through the NARP, fiasco, we would keep communication with the agents like, hey, here's what's going on here. Hey, here's how it might change your business. Hey, here's some new contracts that we created just for us, proprietary for our agents. So keeping them at the top of their game as far as, education of their business and their craft and their market is so important. And we do have some top producing agents. One of our agents was actually number 15 in the entire world in Remax, which was amazing. They have, I think they're in over 100 countries and, thousands of agents worldwide. So, it was amazing. And we're very, tens of thousands, I don't know how many thousands, but many thousands of agents. But we're very lucky with the group we have. And, I think it also makes sense where you need to have standards and guidelines and not just chase the money, where we've had top producing agents that wanted to join our office that we said no to, and because it wasn't a good fit and they didn't share our principles and morals and the way we do business. And not saying they are right or wrong, but it just wasn't a good fit. So I think having that mindset of like, hey, it's the money will come. Do business the right way, the money will come, and I've never seen it not happen. Where if somebody works hard and has morals and principles, that the money doesn't come. So I think just having that hard rule set of keeping yourself and to that standard is super important, and also keeps you out of trouble as well.
Yeah, I guess it's having that yeah, that high bar for your business and kind of knowing where people are a fit and when they're not a fit. And if they're not a fit, having the sort of backbone, let's call it, to say to them, actually, look, it's not a fit, it's not for us, sort of things. You mentioned obviously you'd been through sort of team members over the years and sort of some have worked out and some haven't, sort of thing. Whereas some companies look at it and go, oh, they're okay. They're all right. They're 5 out of 10, but at least they're not a 4 out of 10 sort of thing. Whereas, other companies look at it and go, actually, we only take on people that are 8, 9, 10 out of 10 sort of thing. And if you're not that, then in the nicest possible way, you're kind of not for us, really. So how important do you think that sort of not only hiring the right people, but also probably moving the wrong people on is?
It can be very detrimental, and I've fallen in that trap before where, when we first started our brokerage, it was just myself and my wife. And, sometimes my mom would work the front desk and, if, like, the toilet was dirty, I would go there and clean it myself. And it was very, very challenging. And it's very easy. And I fell into that trap of, just bringing as many people on board as you can because you got to keep the lights on. So I definitely get that. But having that mindset of the rules and principles when you can, because obviously you do need to keep the lights on. I get that. Is super important because, I will tell you, I was also the most stressed out I've ever been in my life because I was dealing with people I didn't want to deal with. They stressed me out. I would have one eye open at night when I'd sleep because I'd be worried about somebody suing somebody because somebody was doing something, the wrong way. So it can be very challenging, but, having the right people and not bringing in any toxic energy will definitely help you sleep at night and be less stressed and in the long run keep you out of trouble. So that's super important. And unfortunately, when you bring the wrong person in the office, they will be like a cancer and possibly contaminate and corrupt other people as well. Because they'll chat and they'll see how one person's doing and the other person's doing. And it's funny because we and they all knew it. We had a camera in the office and I would hear these conversations, talking crap or smack about, whoever and this and that. And, it was just, it could have been a bad environment, but, luckily we, got out of it very strong and we brought, it was always we were all about volume when we first started because, like I said, we had to keep the lights on, but we slowly churned out the wrong people and brought in the right people and this kind of thing. But, throughout our whole time, we've always had fantastic people. I couldn't be happier. And, when we found out that somebody possibly wasn't a good fit, we would churn them out pretty quickly. And it all worked out.
Yeah, sometimes you've got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your princes. So that's absolutely true. So talk me through about lead generation and how you get your leads for your business these days. Because I would imagine that social media's had a massive impact on your business in the last probably 5 years or so, I'd imagine. Talk me through sort of where the top agents are and what you sort of see the trends approaching. Because generally speaking, the US is a couple of years ahead of the UK when it comes to sort of market and trends and technology and whatever else it may be. So what sort of trends are emerging in the US with regard to sort of socials and sort of that front end stuff that you think are coming down the line?
Sure. So, marketing can be a black hole for any business. And I think, I can talk about this for hours because we've lost like over the course of my career millions of dollars trying to do the marketing and figuring it out. And I think with marketing, the term is always be testing, right? That's kind of like the gimmick with marketing, which I understand. But, when I think that if I could start all over and kind of talk to a new agent, I would say, when you first start, do everything that's free. So going back to reaching out to all your network, all your contacts, everybody you know, that is going to, and even 20 years into it, that is still 90%, over 90% of our business is past clients, referrals, people we know. So that is the most important and fruitful thing. Even though we've spent millions of dollars on marketing over the years, that's still what feeds us. So I think really paying attention to that and what's free again. And I think, going back to what's free is if you are a hermit and you don't have a lot of friends and you're not social and you don't know anyone, then this business isn't for you. Not to be, cold about it, but that's the truth. If you want to be successful in this, you need to be part of the community. You need to go, if you go to the gym, everybody in the gym better know that this is what you do. If you go to art class or jujitsu or whatever, everybody there better know, Matin is a real estate agent or a broker or whatever, because that is so important and you need to kind of shout it from the mountaintops. And the old no, thought process when I first started was, hey, your goal should be to hand out at least 5 business cards every day. So, translating that to today, yeah, it's a little different with social media and nobody, business cards are kind of starting to become a thing of the past, but you need to have outreach and really shout it from the mountaintops because no matter how much marketing you do, especially when you first start and you're like on a budget, you shouldn't be wasting a lot of money on marketing. So that's for the new person, right? But if you want to grow and you get past that and you're crushing it with your network and invest in marketing, there's so many things out there. Obviously, we all know it. And I can give you our story when, when Zillow was first new, for example, I was spending a ton of money on Zillow and I was crushing it. I was making more than I had ever made, and it was amazing. And, it was like a drug where I would, spend a couple $1,000s and I'd be like crushing it and I would be like, okay, more and more and more. And it got to the point where we were spending over, 20, 30, $40,000 a month on Zillow. And what ended up happening there was, of course, every zip code, the prices went up, 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 and up. And in today, fast forward, I'm probably gonna get flagged here and get a lot of flack, but just like every realtor, I hate Zillow and all those services because the problem with them is it ends up being where, and again, if you're young and hungry, I'm, 38 years old now. It's different than back then. Like back then, I had a lot of real estate signs. I own a ton of property and we manage a ton of property, and I'd have my cell phone number on all these properties. And I'd get calls all day, and I was like, this is amazing, blah. But, fast forward, I started getting heart palpitations, right? So, the thing with that is, with Zillow, it ends up becoming where it's almost like you're working for them, where you give them money, they send you leads, and if you don't answer within 5 minutes, they'll flag you, they'll send it to the next person. You better be on call all day. So it can be very stressful depending on where you are in your life. If you're in your 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, whatever, yes, crush it, get your phone number out there, like be prepared to answer the phone and work 24/7. And I still work 24/7, but it's on my own terms, not on call. So, with that, I would say Zillow and all those things are great, but be very careful and it can become a stressful waste of money also. And that goes with all those platforms. But, and then going to social media, for example, social media ads and boosting. So with social media, there's so many realtors out there and in the States too. If you look at the chart of price increases, it goes with the chart of real estate agents getting licensed. And then when the prices go down, the real estate license go away. So that's how it is here. And there's always been way more people that are licensed than should be. And the problem is the barrier to entry is so low. You don't need a college degree, and not to say that's important or not. You don't need any, work history, corporate experience, whatever. You just need to be 18 years old and pass a test and take a couple classes. It's way too easy. So one of my dreams would be if they made the standards to become an agent or broker higher, and that would, I think, fix a lot of these issues. But right now, every Tom, Susie, and Jack has a license, and on, social media, you see their posts all day, and that's great, wonderful, and I'm sure they get some business out of it. But the way I see that is you are using that to keep in front of your network so they know that you're in this business. Just like when I said when you go to jujitsu or whatever, everybody should know you're in the business. That is what that is. But reality of it is, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, unless you're paying Facebook to boost your post, nobody's seeing it. Only your network is seeing it. So having that understanding is important where, hey, if you want to actually outreach other people, you have to pay them. They have a business and you have to boost your post to get it out there. And there are a lot of mindsets that make sense, and we've had some success with it. And I think the future is only video. Stagnant images are kind of becoming a thing of the past. So you really need to get into the video, doing things like this, podcasts, interviews, video shorts, whatever. And getting a following and notoriety on social media is super important, and I think can feed everything. So that's important. And then there's also there's a million things we can talk about, but there's also like Google SEO, Google local service ads, which I do think that is a good use of your money is local service ads. Search engine optimization is a very challenging piece as well, where it's not like, oh, I got my SEO good, I'm done. I'm going to be at the top of the list forever. No, SEO is something that you have to constantly fix and calibrate and tweak on an ongoing basis forever and ever and ever and ever. So it costs a lot of money and energy to do all these things. There's a lot of other things we can talk about, like, the sign on the yard is important, billboards maybe, bus stop ads, whatever, local businesses having things there, going to networking events. We can go on and on, but, all these things are important, but it kind of depends on where you are on your journey. If you're just starting out, it is a very tough business unless you come from a, wealth or whatever. Yeah, you have an endless budget, you can do whatever you want. But if you're on a tight budget and you're only feeding yourself off of what you sell, do not waste any money on marketing. Focus on your network, focus on the free stuff, and put yourself out there, network, go to events, be involved in classes and extracurricular activities where everybody knows what you're doing. And then as you grow your business and you're really fully dominating your network, then slowly start spending a little money on what works. But I think social media, SEO, Google local service ads, those are good options. And the top brokers and agents here that are, number one, they do everything, right? They can afford it. They bought every zip code on Zillow, they bought everything on the realtor.com, so they can afford it. But if you're just starting out, you really have to think it through and, not fall into that black hole trap of marketing.
Amazing. Matin, thank you so much. You've been a fountain of knowledge today, to
I
say the least.
appreciate
So
it.
thank you so much for being a brilliant guest. Been absolutely brilliant. So if anyone wants to get hold of you, get in contact with you, see what you're up to, where's the best place for them to go?
So our website is plusrealtors.com. You can learn all about us there, see all our experts, listings, services we offer, all that stuff. And then our property management website is plusmanagers.com. You could also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And we actually are planning on starting our own podcast soon as well. So hopefully you'll be one of our guests
Yeah, there we
in
go.
your
Open
time.
invite. I'll bite your arm off.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.